this truth of going through the crucible of suffering, as it is called, is there in different forms in mystic lore. I was just reminded of one of Tagore's poem, जाके तुमी बहिते चाहो आपार प्रेमेर भार एकिए बारे सबे तुमी घोचाओ दए तार ना थाके तार मान अपमान. Mani, you in one go the divine tears away all the scaffoldings, all the. Mother says that when you come to yoga you must be prepared to leave everything and hang by nothing else but the slender thread of faith. Guru Nanak says that who is going to find the divine? He says not an easy task. And then he says, Sadho man ka maan tyago, काम क्रोध संगति दुर्जन की तासे हनिस भागो. And then he says, astuti ninda dau tyagi, और मान अपमान. So those who are looking only for goody things in life get goody things, but not more. This is not to love suffering, certainly not. We should never love suffering, because if we suffer, the divine suffers. That's what we are reading. That's what Shri Krishna says in the Gita. But it will come. It's a purifying fire. It's something which makes us strong, and everybody has to go through it. Even the great who came to save the suffering world. Things are much better now. We cannot imagine Sharmad beheaded by Aurangzeb. We read these lines, Yoon quartered. It's very Yoon cut into pieces, quartered, several pieces. It's a fact. He was till the last minute. Same with Guru Gobind Singh's father. And there's a very touching story that, because there is the Mughal rule in India, and at that time it was not India, and they don't know how to free from this rule, which has become more and more oppressive. So his father says, I think it was Guru Tegh Bahadur, if I am right, and he is asked that how is it possible to free? He says, yes, if one human being can sacrifice himself, then the freedom will come. So who will sacrifice? And his son, 9-year-old son, says, who else but you? You are the one who is capable of doing it, father. What a son and what a father. And then it gives a challenge to Aurangzeb. You want to convert so many persons. It seems that he used to every evening weigh how many Janeus are there which he has converted or killed. Based on that, every day this was one of his routine. And he says, look, I am telling you one thing. You try to convert me. And if you can convert me, others will follow. I am giving you this word. And he tries, tortures, eventually cuts him to pieces, beheads him. And he refuses. So this, they have gone through. And we can't imagine that thanks to Divine Mother's advent, she is carrying us actually in arms of love. Because she knows that those who come with this aspiration, what they have to go through. So see, but still some suffering is inevitable. When someone complained to Sri Aurobindo, I am having this problem, that problem, why aren't you doing something about it? It was a very physical problem of a, normally what women go through. And Sri Aurobindo says, tell her, whatever is best is being done for her. But something she has to bear. Because this is the way certain desires are being thrown out of her system. We cannot understand the deeper forces at play. Tell her whatever is best possible is being done for her. So whenever we become restless and go through difficulty, we should cling all the more to the divine. Because if not he, then who else will carry us? And this moment comes in everybody's life. It's a process. It's not that only bad people suffer. The good, the great, they suffer more. Only they don't feel the suffering when they are supported by the divine, because her love paves the way. For every tear that they go through, her love pays back in much more. So the tears are no more tears, but when these tears are offered at her feet, she picks them up and returns them as pearls of strength and wisdom. This is the beauty of the way divine deals with us. Otherwise, they are tears and they wash away. So instead of crying here and there, if tears come, they are natural. We should cry before the divine. The mother, there is a beautiful prayer of the mother. She says, "Suddenly before thee my pride fell, and I wept and wept the sweetest tears of my life." So, when one goes through these things, this is what one should do. Why? Still there is a question. But why? This seed of Godhead sleeps in mortal hearts. The flower of Godhead grows on the world tree. All shall discover God in self and things. So the journey from the seed to the flower or the fruit is the journey which is fraught with all kinds of experiences. Just as a seed has to be buried deep inside the earth, and all the waste, the darkness, the dirt of the world has thrown upon it like urea, like, to increase its fertility. And then it has to journey through this, through so many struggles. And yet its destiny is to blossom into a flower or a fruit. But when God's messenger comes to help the world and lead the soul of earth to higher things, he too must carry the yoke he came to unloose. He too must bear the pang that he would heal. So people often raise this question, if Christ was God, why didn't he save himself and run away from the cross? The fact is, if he saved himself and ran away from the cross, he would not be able to save anyone. He has shown the Savior's way. When Sri Aurobindo was asked by Nirodha, "We have seen you cure so many persons." Because mother said, now only it is up to him. Only he can do something. So why don't you cure yourself? So he says, can't tell you, won't understand. Something to that effect. This is something which cannot be explained. What he would have said, that all the darkness, the poison of the world I am drinking, can't tell you, you won't understand. So this is how he opens the door. He must carry the cross, exempt and unafflicted by earth's fate. How shall he cure the ills he never felt? This is the reason for the divine's suffering upon earth. And we do it the other way around. If so and so is divine, why does he or she suffer or fall ill? Actually, we should say that only the divine can do it. At one place, Sri Aurobindo says that God is indeed great. That is why he can afford to become weak. Only somebody who is omnipotent knows that he is omnipotent and therefore can afford to become weak. At another place he says, follow not the leader who has never failed or fall, who has never suffered failure or fall. He says, if you follow such a leader, he doesn't know what it means. Look at Sri Aurobindo's own life. How he has gone through everything. Gone into the jail, all chased by the Britishers. At one place he says that when someone asked him that, it's fine for you to say you are comfortable in that supramental consciousness. He says, good Lord, I have led a life, a dangerous life, with the sword hanging over my head. Can we imagine that state when he is in jail, and at that point one doesn't know what is going to happen? It's a British rule. So all that he has gone through, therefore he can say, he says that because we have gone through, therefore we can tell you that there is hope for you. Otherwise, how could he give hope? He covers the world's agony with his calm. Again and again, Mother and Sri Aurobindo, that during those days, and how on 2nd December also, the mother went but came back early. No, people could sense, but nobody knew what's happening. What on 24th November, some people could sense 1950. People were asked to hurry through towards the end. But still, by and large, nobody understood that the decision has been taken and the Lord has decided to withdraw, and He's absorbing into Himself all the poison of the world. So He would give calm and not, oh, I am in pain. But though to the outward eye no sign appears, and peace is given to our torn human hearts, the struggle is there, and paid the unseen price. The fire, the strife, the wrestle are within. That's what he said. That these suffering that the avatar goes through are real. We cannot imagine what mother would have experienced when Sri Aurobindo withdrew. It seems that for 12 days she did not come down. She was wearing a veil and she would not come down. And later on she would say that she wanted to leave at that point of time. It was such a strong urge because they are one in two bodies. But then she saw the children, their agony, how much they are suffering. So suddenly she came out on the 13th or 14th day, and as the disciples write, that once again the same sweet smile which filled our hearts, once again with that joy and love. Because it was a terrible moment, a very difficult moment for so many within the ashram context. So nobody could see what she would have gone through or what she was going through. And this is also a beautiful example for us, because if there is one example, it is Mother and Sri Aurobindo's. Because we so often start complaining and crying and fretting and fuming, sometimes for a corn in the feet, and at other times for small little fever, small little issues. It's nothing. Look what life they have led and shown us. Sri Aurobindo, who gave so much light to this world, would sit often in kerosene lamp, and later on, of course, the electrical light came. What kind of light it would have been, and working on the typewriter, and how he lost his eye but continued to give knowledge and light to us. And the mother, she would, Champak Lalji would say, no, mother, you will not go, you are tired or something like that. And she would get up and say, no, I have come here for that. She would stand for darshan or meeting and her legs would be swollen. But she would not say that, no, I am tired, I want to rest. Living in that small room for so many decades, where there was not even a separate proper place for her. The present room has come much later. If I am not mistaken, maybe early 50. So this is how she has shown the way. But to everybody she gave love. He carries the suffering world in his own breast. Its sins weigh on his thoughts. Its grief is his. Earth's ancient load lies heavy on his soul. Night and its powers beleaguer his tardy steps. That's why when mother was asked, how can we help in your work? Of course, she has said different things at different times, but one of them was, just simply be happy. It will reduce one more person's load. How she would say that, this is nothing when there is dirt outside and I have to clean it. There is so much more that I have to cleanse in every human being. So if we can just be happy, just make sure that our inner consciousness is not filled with that dirt, we'll at least that much we will do. Some people have this strange way of looking at, and it has its own validity. So, we know Dr. Bisht, who was mother's physician, and he was telling me that he wouldn't go for darshan very often. I mean, that darshan, that very often mother would give different types of darshans. And so he said, you know why? I said, I didn't quite appreciate it, but I said, okay, what was it? He says, mother would pick up and give 200 times, 300 times. I used to feel her hand must be feeling tired. So at least I can prevent one more movement. Of course, I said, you could have stood far and seen. But nevertheless, sometimes this thought, that how much she is doing for everyone, how much they have worked and continue to work. Night and its powers beleaguer his tardy steps. The Titan adversary's clutch he bears. His march is a battle and a pilgrimage. What a beautiful line it is. The pilgrimage and a battle. They are not two different things. At one place, Sri Aurobindo says that, who is able to reach the seat of the soul? So the gods tell Savitri, as you follow the world's winding highways, trod by few wounded pilgrim feet, then you will know that the seat of soul is nearby. So here, that same experience, life's evil smites, he is stricken with the world's pain. A million wounds gape in his secret heart. That consciousness becomes one with everything. At one place, Sri Aurobindo says, I am the beast he slays, the bird he feeds and saves. So this is an experience where everything one experiences within, the pain and suffering in all creation. And to understand it, that how is it possible, the simplest way to understand it is how a mother experiences the child's pain and suffering. Very often the suffering that a mother feels for the child is more than the child's own suffering. Child wants to play and jump about even with fever, but mother is lot more experiencing it. So if a human mother can experience it with 1, 2 or few children, so how much more the world mother would experience it with all her children. He journeys sleepless through an unending night. Antagonist forces crowd across his path. A siege, a combat is his inner life. Even worse may be the cost, direr the pain. His large identity and all harboring love shall bring the cosmic anguish into his depths. The sorrow of all living things shall come and knock at his doors and live within his house. This too we know how often the mother would suddenly go into trance. Somebody is calling, somebody is saying something, and that consciousness is beyond human comprehension. A very interesting story about someone who told Bulada that, please inform mother that my so-and-so has died. And he thought, why disturb the mother? He went and told all this at the Samadhi. This after Sri Aurobindo's physical withdrawal. So next day when the person met him, did you tell? He said, no, I thought, why disturb mother at this time? So I just spoke at the Samadhi. So he got very annoyed. And he was going up to the mother. And as he goes up to the mother, he said, Mother, yes, I know, Bulla has told me yesterday. What consciousness it is that everything, all the prayers, all the difficulties, even angers of people, Sri Aurobindo would say that so-and-so is coming up the stairs, feeling lot of anger towards me. And as the person would come, because he would get these waves and let them sink into his calm. Give in response, peace and light. A dreadful cord of sympathy can tie all suffering into his single grief and make all agony in all the worlds his own. There is a little bit only Mother and Shubindev have revealed about their life. At one place, the mother reveals that this Asura of falsehood comes and says, "Do you know what I am going to do? Come and see." So see, it's an inner vision where he takes, they both go to a cliff, and he starts throwing all kinds of destructive things, bombs, and they are bursting and destroying things. And the mother keeps seeing him, and when he has finished, she asks him, "Is it over? Finished?" And then she says, he can do nothing. He realizes that he is powerless before that majesty, and just frets and frowns and goes away. So all this she would have undergone and continues to undergo and take upon herself, which we'll never know. That's how we go. Someone said very nicely, what is yoga in the ashram context? It was one of the beautiful definitions of yoga that I heard. Gyanvati Gupta. So some people asked her, आप साधना के बारे में बताइए, tell us about sadhana. So she said, पता नहीं, लेकिन जब हमको दुख होता है, पीड़ा होती है, हम समाधि पे जाके कह देते हैं और माँ पीड़ा दूर कर देती हैं और हम वापस खुशी खुशी चले आते हैं. Like when we have pain and tears are coming from our eyes, we go and tell at the samadhi, mother takes away all that pain and we come back smiling and happy. She says, यही साधना है हमारी. So the people who are very new couldn't understand that really it is as simple as that. And it's amazing. And till date, it is as simple as that. This is part of my job to help people through their crisis. But how simpler way this is. Go, tell the mother, and done with it. That's it. Then leave it to mother. What she will do, she will not do. One has to go through, not go through. How beautiful it would be. And really at the end of the whole journey, trying everything, one really reaches this point that this is the best way. One wouldn't say this is the only way. There are so many ways. Whatever we have faith in, mother acts through that. But this is the best way. So she takes the pain and gives back joy in return. He is lashed with the whips that tear the world's worn heart. The weeping of the centuries visits his eyes. He wears the blood-glued, fiery centaur shirt. The most brutal, it's mythological. Centaurs were supposed to be, but actually, many times people portray that they were really, actually, at some point of time, real race upon earth. I don't really believe it's possible, but they were half human. The upper part was human, and the torso was of a horse. They're extremely brutal. The way they would kill and all kinds of plunder. And some people believe that they were forces of the vital world who would incarnate in certain people. And one of them was Genghis Khan. Was so brutal that he would make the horse, instead of water, he would drink the horse's blood, his own horse, and then pinch it with his hand and drive through. Or just for his fun, entertainment, he would make elephants fall into a pit, and then they would cry because, they suddenly realize they are in a pit, and he would relish it. So all this experience the divine goes through, and we cannot imagine all the panorama of all creation, all the pain is coming here. The poison of the world has stained his throat. We know Nilkant Shiva, and how Sri Aurobindo, our own Shiva, has taken the poison and given his life to hasten the supramental advent upon earth. And we have the story of Shiva, and that's why he is regarded as a great god, because when poison came out, everybody wanted Amrit. But poison will come before Amrit. So nobody is ready, nobody is willing. So Shiva says, I will take it. This is my share. Because in a yagna, it is like a yagna labor. So everybody has to get his own share. So all the gods have gathered to get Amrit, share of joy. Even the titans want Amrit, share of joy. But somebody has to get the dirty share also. So Shiva says, I will accept the poisonous part. This is my share. And so he takes it, stains his throat. And as the story goes, that at that point of time, as he's drinking the halahal, he sees many snakes who have also taken something of this poison that spills. And that's why they are so dear to Shiva and the titans, because they have chosen to drink the pain and suffering of the world. We cannot imagine. We think Titan's life, it's full of pain and suffering, full of jealousy, hatred, fear. They are afraid of everybody, even of God. So imagine what life it is. For them, God is also somebody who is cruel, who will punish. That's how they conceive. And their whole life is always competing, ambition, why so and so is there. It's a tremendous suffering. It's the poison of the world. And they have taken. Only thing is, Sri Aurobindo says, what the titans have done unconsciously, do thou consciously, as Shiva has done. So titans take all this unconsciously. They don't know. They are actually drinking poison and spoiling their own life and health. They think it's something very great. But Shiva takes it consciously. He knows this is the poison draught and drinks it. In the marketplace of matter's capital, amidst the chafferings of the affair called life. What a wonderful markets, matters, capital. And what are these chafferings? Small dealings, bargaining, where what do you ultimately bargain for? Maybe an extra loaf of bread. Sometimes, that also becomes a big issue. That if I can get a little extra from everywhere, including dining room, why shouldn't I? So, this mind, how stupid it can be. And chafferings called life, where we are bargaining for small issues and losing on the big ones. He is tied to the stake of a perennial fire. That's there in the story of Perseus the Deliverer, where Andromeda, the mortal nature meant to be uplifted, is tied to the stake before the waves. And we have our own version of it in the story of Sunshep, who is tied to the stake to be offered as sacrifice. And then one doesn't know what to do. So he prays to Lord Varuna, and Varuna comes and cuts the 3 cords with which he is tied. So the lower cord he cuts and throws below. The middle cords he cuts and throws to the side. Very interesting story. And the upper cord he cuts and throws up. So the lower cord is the cord of matter, the grip of the subconscient. And the middle cord is of the vital and the universal ignorance. And the higher cord is the cord of the mind. And Varuna comes to free him. So here that is a symbol that tied to the stake. And we are the ones who are being sacrificed. And the paradox is we don't not only not know it, like that goat who is being driven, we are very happy about it. Sometimes at the end of life, parents are very happy that they have done so much for their children. If they could do so much, even a little bit of it for God, life would be so beautiful. But they are very happy, and they are happy. God knows sometimes they are very sad also that we did so much. What did we get out of it? He has flown away. It's okay. One opportunity to learn unconditional love. But if one could do 1/100th of it for the divine, Sri Aurobindo says sacrifice is extracted from this world, whether we like it or not. But if we do it joyously and we do it for the divine, then life would be beautiful. But unconsciously it is taken up from us. So often when people say that, why is, surrender. But surrender, what is the difficulty of surrender? The difficulty is that we have given surrender to so many things, to so many persons. So now if we have to surrender to the divine, we have to first extract it. Because they say, no, we own it. How can you ask it? So as long as a person is living a nice family life, happy life, making everybody happy, one doesn't mind. Okay, sometime you can meditate also and spend at the ashram. But the moment one says, no, I want to live my life entirely for the divine, then the problem starts. Why? Because to start with, we had surrendered. Now, one has to extract and then surrender, because there is nothing which we can really say is our own to be surrendered. So here we have this stake of a perennial fire. He burns on an unseen original verge, that matter may be turned to spirit stuff. He is the victim in his own sacrifice. Burns perennially, so that one day this matter may change. This is the aspiration of the soul. The immortal, bound to earth's mortality, appearing and perishing on the roads of time, creates God's moment by eternity's beat. So beautiful. So every time we are born in one lifetime, we have at least some moments of divine touch in our life. And they are our treasures. They say that before dying, there is a review of the whole life before oneself. Naturally, the review is compressed. Only the psychic memories, intense memories. Maybe in 10 minutes, one sees the whole life. We may think that 100 years or 90 years were very important for us. But from God's point of view, perhaps 10 minutes. Those were the real moments. So by eternity's beats, something of the divine touch expressed itself. Maybe in a word, a cry, an aspiration, a touch, a moment's feeling, an urge to give oneself. Anything, enthusiasm for the Lord's work, anything. But that's how it creates God's moment by eternity's beats. So we go away, but that remains with our soul, and that becomes an endowment for earth. That somebody did it, so earth remembers it. That's why Mother said that Sri Aurobindo's birth is an eternal birth, and it will always be remembered in the earth's history. He dies that the world may be newborn and live. This applies at so many levels, including biological. Actually, except for human beings, in all the animals, the lifespan is same as the age of the reproductive cycle coming to an end. So just as we have menopause as human beings, women, so in animals, the menopause is also the time when they would die, they would wither away. But what happens before they die? They extend into the new one. Something of that wisdom extends. But in human beings, we are given a second lease of life. That okay, now you have looked after the biological side. Now how about turning your heart and mind to something greater? So this is unique gift to humanity in many ways. My friend has done a lot of research on this. But essentially it is that we die, but something of that we extend into our children. And that is how a slow process of evolution takes place. He dies that the world may be newborn and live. And we know now the greatest sacrifice of Sri Aurobindo, that so few disciples, but because he absorbed all these forces and withdrew, now there is such a wide movement. So many of us can read, can walk the path, can conceive of something new, have hope, faith. Even if he escapes the fiercest fires, even if the world breaks not in a drowning sea, only by hard sacrifice is high heaven earned. So it doesn't mean that we have to all start looking, oh, in my life there has not been so much pain, so maybe, it's not like that. Even if such things may not happen, but still the law of sacrifice remains. And that's what we read in Love and Death, and it was projected there, that God of love tells Ruru, you want to change death and fate. You want your beloved back? Yes. So if you cry, it won't work out. Because death every day takes tears of humanity as a wine. He loves it. So he's not going to release the dead. If you cry, he will say, very good, I have got my quota. There's a line in Savitri like that. The oblation of our unwept tears. So what can move him? Sacrifice. Only that can move the gods. So if we want high heavens, we have to go through the inner process of sacrifice, which Sri Aurobindo says is the dread law of the way. And none can abrogate it. So maybe outside things may happen, may not happen. But inwardly still there has to be a price paid for the great ascent. And when it is not paid, we fall short. He must face the fight, the pang who would conquer hell. And then this last movement where Sri Aurobindo brings out that what is this hell? What is this darkness that besieges man? A dark, concealed hostility is lodged in the human depths, in the hidden heart of time, that claims the right to change and mar God's work. It's not outside. So when we keep saying, that, oh, what to do? I can't do this yoga. Why? Because I have family problems. Basically, it's not a family problem, it's personal problem. Or when we blame it on somebody else. It's nobody else is responsible. We are responsible. We may see hostile forces in the whole world, but ultimately this hostility is lost within us. And that's what Sri Aurobindo is revealing. It's lost in the human depths. A secret enmity ambushes the world's march. It leaves a mark on thought and speech and act. Everything is beautiful. One is going lovely on the path. And suddenly a twisted thought enters the brain. Immediately we should reject it, because a thought such as doubt, fear, they are dangerous. Jealousies, they are dangerous for the soul. And as soon as they enter, they have to, because they will come and take us very far. Speech. One utters something, and much later one realizes, oh, I wish I had not done it. And there's so many examples of this, that one has ended up, all the asuras end up asking for weird boons. Moment the speech is overtaken, and acts, of course. It stamps stain and defect on all things done. Till it is slain, peace is forbidden on earth. So we are moved sometimes with these dark, concealed hostilities, and we end up doing things which we should not have done. Much later, sense comes, but by then things have moved ahead. And yet, humanity goes through this. And till that is tackled, there cannot be peace on earth. There is no visible foe, but the unseen is round us. Forces intangible besiege. Touches from alien realms, thoughts not our own, overtake us and compel the erring heart. Our lives are caught in an ambiguous net. And one of the signs of these forces is doubts, fear, suddenly unexplained fear, confusion in the mind, or depression for no reason at all. What is depression? That we read the other day about the subconscious pain where it's already born. So very often depression for no reason at all. Why? Because that comes up. And sometimes it's very interesting. I don't know, there is a wonderful, interesting Hindi word for it, karahana. That, when people are in agony, and sometimes one can hear it. And it's interesting that it's not, there is no physical reason for it. It's because something in the subconscious has been touched. And in that karahana, one can either see pain or a longing, a yearning for the light, for freedom, for bliss. It's yearning for that. So these are forces which are around us and they suddenly besiege us. An adversary force was born of old, invader of the life of mortal man. It hides from him the straight, immortal path. That is why Mother and Sri Aurobindo do not condemn anyone, because they know that it's not just his karma. Karma itself, be open. What they would say is, not don't do this and do this, not like that. They would say, be careful, watch out. Look, these forces are entering you. Don't encourage these thoughts. Don't encourage these feelings. These are dangerous. They will take you far away. This is what they would say. Instead, open to the mother. Open to her light and grace. Every time people would think that mother does not love me, or she loves probably that person more than me, because she has given more time to that person. So and so can visit her every day, so he must be more close to her in sadhana. All these thoughts used to come. And Sri Aurobindo would take pains to say that you cannot judge the mother's actions in this way, that she must deal with everybody in the same way. She deals according to the necessities of the person. And it's not that somebody who visits her every day is necessarily closer to her than the other person who visits her once in a while. So all these, our human conceptions, how they can come in the way, it's there. This adversary force which is all the time distracting people. One comes fully clear, this is my goal. And suddenly after 1 year and 2 years begins to feel restless. Am I in the right place? Maybe I should be somewhere else. And then slowly one is taken far, far, far away. How much one has to be careful. How people used to get this wanderlust. And mother would understand. Sat Prem's letters, he would say, I don't think I can stay here. He had such a rebellious nature. I want to wander. I can't stay at one place and work under people and given a mechanical work. I can't do like this. So the mother very lovingly would say, you see, better you stay here. But if you want to try the experiment, so he would go. Then he would realize that maybe I should be back here. So he would write to the mother, Mother, I am missing you. I am missing this, that. And then mother would say, will you forgive everything, forget everything and accept me? Mother says, in fact, my child, I am waiting for you to come back. So why did you let me go, mother? Because I wanted you to know that this is your place. And then again and again he does this. Then mother says, you know what? What is your problem? So mother says, your problem is that you think only about yourself and you do not know the joy of service. The other two things mother says. You're thinking only about yourself. You do not know the joy of service. But these forces come. They take away such people. Dilip Kumar Roy. Gone. And mother, what love she had for him. Even though he went against her. Wrote letters to the then Prime Minister. Against the mother. Not just against ashram. Against the mother. And mother had kept room for him for such a long time. That his soul comes at night to rest here. Much later he would realize that what that love is. But these are forces that besiege. They fill the mind with doubt or suddenly all kinds of suggestions. Some people get this suggestion to suddenly lead a very ascetic life. There is a person who used to get this suggestion that I want to take away all my clothes and wander into the forest of Himalayas. Utter cold. That's how I will do my yoga of transformation. This used to be so strong, so strong. And he believed that this is right. How these forces can besiege and take one away. An adversary force was born of old. It hides from him the straight, immortal path. A power came in to veil the eternal light. A power opposed to the eternal will diverts the messages of the infallible word. We'll just read it, but we'll continue tomorrow. Contorts the contours of the cosmic plan. A whisper lures to evil the human heart. It seals up wisdom's eyes, the soul's regard. It is the origin of our suffering here. It binds earth to calamity and pain. Even when the word of God is there, we don't believe it. Thus, this all must conquer who would bring down God's peace. So the basic essence is, any suggestion that keeps us away from the mother, it can come in various ways. It can come in such a way, what is the need or use of going to the samadhi? In today's context, it can come like that. And it can take sometimes very nice ways. Mother is everywhere. Or it can take even this way. Divine is in everyone. So what's so special about Mother and Shiva? The divine is in myself. That's how the Titan's path door opens. So that's why it is called Shurasya Dhara, the razor's edge path. That any tilt in this way or that way can take us away. So one has to be very careful of those thoughts that take us away from the divine, or fill our mind and heart with all kinds of fears and doubts. Instead of nurturing them and rationalizing and trying to reason out, we should throw it like poison. Physical poison does less harm because it can only take away the body. But this is dangerous poison, and instantly one should throw away. This all must conquer who would bring down God's peace. This hidden foe lost in the human breast, man must overcome or miss his higher fate. This is the inner war without escape. Everybody has to go through. When someone came and met Arjav, the British mathematician and who would blossom into a beautiful poet, he also died relatively young. And he asked, after all, what are you doing here? So he said, well, if I tell you, would you understand? Yes, tell me. We are fighting with our own egos. Of course, sometimes we end up fighting with others because that's easy. Always it is somebody else's problem. I am unable to do sadhana because so and so is cooking. I am unable to do sadhana because look at that person. He is a horrible person. I am unable to do sadhana because all these things have nothing to do with yoga and they are here. Nothing can come between us and the divine. If we want to really walk the path, nothing can come except the folly and darkness of our own thoughts and heart. So we'll stop here and continue tomorrow. Tomorrow is the last day. So we'll have one session. Anyways, it's Saturday, so one session, 5:15 to 6.